Are we on?
This
Okay, grand.
Jeez.
Okay, well, here we are,
Don't want to be confused with the likes
the
of
Warrant
us.
Committee on Thursday night, and we have two pieces of business to take care of tonight. We want to decide what we're doing about Article 8, which is non-conforming dimensions, and also after that we need to vote a recommendation for Article 6, which is town, whether or not the town should expand from 3 selectmen to 5 selectmen, and whether or not the whole thing should be put to a referendum of the town or not. So, anyway, as far as what can I tell you about non-conforming dimensions? This article that you don't know. Oh, good. That you don't know already. Well, one of the concerns we've had on all the planning board articles is whether or not they pass legal muster, and we haven't gotten back a lot of feedback on that yet. On this one in particular, the question was, since we have changed the insertion point of the article from Section 9 of the zoning bylaw to Section 4, and we changed some of the language, have our changes put our recommendation out of scope with the original article? If that's the case, and we don't really want to recommend the original article because we think it's destined for the wrong place in the zoning bylaw and could be a lot more clear. But if our recommendation is ruled out of scope, then we have no choice, I think, but to send the subject matter of the article back to the planning board for further study. If it's ruled that we're not out of scope, then we could go forward and make sure that all parties concerned, Joe Prondak, the planning board, the warrant committee, understand exactly what language is being used and why for the situation that is the problem that is being addressed. And so if we want to do that, we would vote no recommendation at this time. Actually, I don't even know if we have to vote that because it's not a recommendation. But in the warrant, it would print no recommendation at this time under the article, and then we would have meetings before town meeting, or hopefully just one, to deal with the subject and develop a recommendation and comment from that. Now, I think that preserves our options for moving forward on this article. If we get to the 3rd week of October and legal opinions are conflicting or haven't been delivered, or other things crop up, we can still throw it back to the planning board. So we can choose to throw it back now, or keep our options open for throwing it back later, or actually getting everybody on the same page and putting it forth to town meeting. And I think it would be valuable to, provided it's in good form, it would be valuable to offer this kind of protection to the homeowners of the town. If that can be done. So, I don't know. Any questions on that, Darnell?
Yeah, I would say we can't really vote it because we don't know if it's going to be a legal vote or not.
Right.
So it would behoove us to say no decision at this time, no recommendation at this time, and we still should get the information from the folks who show up so that we have a running start on this. If legal comes back and say it's fine to do this, we still should get the information, know it, and then go from there.
Lee Michael.
I like the option of keeping the most options open by voting no recommendation at this time. because I think that they're going to be able to figure this out in the next couple of weeks. And I really would like to have at least one zoning article at the fall town meeting. So
Right.
I think that we should have no recommendation right now, let Marion and Ned and the planning board and whoever else, Joe, and figure out what they really want the language to be, get it vetted by legal, and then have us vote on a cleaned up version of this language.
And that'll be fine as long as it's not ruled out of scope, because it's been changed so much since the original submission of the article. So, I mean, it hasn't really been changed. The intent is still the same, and instead of burying it in the Article Section 9, which is sort of the process of a special permit, it puts it back into Section 4, which is non-conforming uses of buildings and land, which is what the subject of the article is all about. So it kind of makes sense to put it in Section 4. But it is a change from what was originally advertised, so we'll have to see about that. So, any other thoughts on that? I would like to see one zoning article go through. Go ahead, Lee Michael.
On that unhappy thought, I move that we recommend that we have no recommendation at this time.
Second.
Okay.
I just have one question.
Sure.
Do we have a printing deadline or anything for this? or-
Yesterday.
Yes, we do. Okay. The printers have told Julia that as long as we get them the warrant early next week, and that means Wednesday to me, and then final copy by the following Monday, that will be all right for getting the warrant distributed in time to meet the requirement of having it out there within 2 weeks before you have to put it in the mail 2 weeks before
Yes.
special town meeting. If it's a regular town meeting, it's 1 week before. But the printers are not anticipating a problem. It is a shorter, thinner warrant than often because we don't have 45 pages of zoning articles. But, and so now in the spring, maybe we will, and so that'll be a nice fat one, but for the moment, we have a thin one, and the printer thinks they'll be able to handle it. Now, that being said, there's some writing to do between now and then, and as soon as we take a vote on this, because it's still motions on the table, we'll talk about that.
Okay.
Okay. So all in favor? Okay, great. Anne Marie, did you have a question?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought your hand was up. Okay, great. So as far as writing goes, Darnell?
Well, we all set? Or you hanging around? Huh? Okay.
Can hear you.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. So that's what I just,
Nice
I
to
just
see
wanted
you,
to make
Bill.
sure we didn't have any questions for you, before you ran away.
Anyway, so the elements that need to be written are an introductory or a report. Okay. My feeling on that is anybody who wants to contribute a thought or a paragraph or the whole thing, they're welcome. We could write about themes of change, themes of override, themes of fear of change. We could write about how lucky Milton as a town has been over the last, 6 years, since the last override in terms of making the grade with the addition of stimulus money and the growth of the savings in group health and good money management, which has brought us higher levels of free cash and the growth now finally in local revenue. Okay, so all of this is wonderful. No thanks to the state. We are just barely back, I think, at the dollar level that was previously peaked in 2008, maybe 9, and so certainly no growth there. But anyway, just things like that, and maybe a little bit of a forecast on where we see the budget going, which I think is headed toward I think it's headed toward an override, or we're going to be losing services, and personnel. So, $3 million is a lot of personnel. But, obviously it's early days yet. We don't know exactly what we can peg local revenue to, and we don't know what free cash will be. But again, aside from maybe $500,000 of free cash, if we get more than that, we ought to use it for capital projects instead of throwing Band-Aids at the operating budget. And that was basically the plan that the Board of Selectmen and the schools and the Warrant Committee sort of agreed to last year. So that we'd use the Band-Aids last year and then try and right the ship this year. Steve?
Have we sent a free cash number to DOR for certification yet?
I don't know the answer to that. That's a good question.
No?
No. Thank you. So we don't know. But I think, local revenue was up, so I think it has a good chance of being, well, I think there's a solid chance it's positive. As you know from the spreadsheet that I sent out earlier in August, I think way back, I estimated 500. We could easily be more than that, but I don't think.
Question. Is there a date certain by which that has to be filed with DOR?
I don't know.
I think it's usually filed in late October.
Is that it? Okay, I thought it was earlier. All right.
I think I could look it up. I don't know when we got our certification last year. I think it was toward the end of October. So anyway, there, I have to write a report. Anybody wants to help, bring it on. We also have to write comments, or should, on the articles. And we don't have that many articles, and some of them you'd probably have to scratch your head a lot to come up with a comment for Articles 1 and 2, that added a lot of content or meaning to the reader. But, we can do that. Articles 1 and 2 were bringing the bylaw and petitioning the general court to bring up their acts to reflect our change of town administrator duties for Board of Selectmen. So that's a pretty cut and dried one. Article 3 is, a comment would include a little history of maybe of the wind turbine. Articles 4 and 5 are repurposing. Article 4 is rescinding and the money that was authorized for the East Milton deck, which we had to do in order to accept the state grant, which came in at the last minute. And if that was a little controversial, that's married to the Pickens Fund for a rescinding. And then Article 5 is the repurposing of about $500,000, 363 from the wind turbine and about 180 from other things. And the comment there, I think, really ought to point out the savings that the diligence of, like maybe the park department, got the town by finding a better estimate than originally discovered, and whatever, things like that. So that might take a little digging. Article 6, Phil and the Town Government Study Committee are going to handle the comment on that. Generally, I don't think if we send an article back to a board that it merits a comment. So that would be the sound one. It was, I mean, I think this won't go away, but it needs a lot more investigation. And then the last one is, the last comment would be our non-conforming dimensions article, and we can't write that. We don't know what our recommendation is yet. So, you want to,
I'll do
Steve,
4
did you?
and 5.
You want to do 4 and 5? You're the man. Okay. And I'm happy to do 3. I mean, 1 and 2 are not going to take much, but
I'll volunteer for 1 and 2.
Oh, I was just gonna say that.
all right. Okay.
You can do
I think we're looking good.
7.
And if we end up with an Article 8, I'll write the comment for that.
You've already made a great start. So, okay, so any comments that can be done over the weekend, that would be great. And if you want to call anybody for any more numbers, I'm sure the treasurer or Amy would be happy to help you out. All right, so we are kind of waiting for Phil because he's Town Government Study Committee representative, and we're going to take up that article next. So I'm sorry I don't have minutes. We don't have a new member. So we'll skip right over those. As far as the schedule goes, we won't meet again until we take up the non-conforming dimensions again with the planning board. Sometime, 3 weeks into October, maybe something like that. Maybe 2 weeks. At which point we may want to start reviewing the fiscal year 17 budget and what that's looking like. I'm not sure how much information we're going to have at that point, although preliminary budgets are due October 1st. I don't know if we will. I don't know when we're going to see anything from the schools. Anne Marie, do you have a clue on that?
I know they're working on their budget now.
Yeah.
I had a discussion with them earlier in the week, but I don't have a date now.
Right. So we have to start considering the picture, even the puzzle, even though all the pieces aren't on the table. So they're great.
Run out of time.
Steve.
On the 17 end, any word, progress, completion of that 5-year, which might now be down to 4?
The 5-year plan?
Yeah?
You should watch the tape from last night.
Yeah.
Not sure I want to go there.
We had a little drama.
So as you know, we didn't see the 5-year plan last year when it was relevant, and I didn't quite. Tom seemed to think that the school committee quashed it. I thought they merely delayed it. Maybe the result was the same. As far as seeing an updated version of that, I don't know. But seeing what it looked like last year when we didn't have any fiscal year 16 figures pumped into it yet, I don't know how instructive that would be, but I would love to have something at some point. And Anne Marie is probably the person who could tell us how many months away that might be.
It is being worked on as we speak.
Nice.
Hopefully,
Working late.
in the not too distant future, we will have a fairly financial forecast.
Okay, and you might want to show it to us first instead of the school committee. I don't know.
Want to have a joint
Nice. All right. Now, Darnell,
My thing
I know what you're going to say.
No, well, I don't know.
Go
My
for
thing
it.
on that would have been, I would have loved to have seen what they had, so we
They
could have
had.
seen, so
Yep.
we could have seen what they were using and how they were figuring, what type of methodology they were using to come up with that 5-year plan. Even that would have helped us to see, to see actually
Right.
what they were looking at. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to like, oh, we did this work, we promised it, and then you just see nothing. It's not perfect, so therefore we won't. You don't see nothing. There's a whole bunch of questions that we had that could have been answered even
Yeah.
if they weren't going forward with it.
Yeah.
That's like.
Lee Michael?
May I suggest that we start up discussion on the expansion of the Board of Selectmen article? I'd like to keep us
You
on
going
track.
somewhere?
Yes.
Okay.
Finish the zoning?
Yes.
We have finished the zoning. We basically kicked it down the road, not back to the planning board, but we think there's a solid chance that this could be put together. Joe Prondak has promised that he's going to get right on it with town council, and I would.
So it's no recommendation at this time?
No recommendation at this time, and we'll meet again in October, and we'll try and get something in front of town meeting that makes sense, and we'll confer a simplified protection for homeowners. Hope that works. So yes, so we do need to discuss Article 6 and vote a recommendation. So, and I know that different people, different members of this committee have voiced opposing opinions as to what we might like to do, and I just want to put up the 2 recommendations that were sent to us by John Flynn. Hey, Michael.
I think I've been probably the most vocal opposing opinion to a town-wide referendum, as I failed to see the need for it, given that there was no groundswell of people who were opposed to the expansion. Last night we did hear some testimony that there will be a motion made at town meeting floor, and threat of some signature collection, et cetera, et cetera. And also observations that there are no people out there who would want to vote no on an expansion of the Board of Selectmen, though I haven't met any of them yet. I think that the situation that we find ourselves in is that we have a united Board of Selectmen who all agree that an expansion from 3 to 5 is a good idea, but that it requires a town-wide referendum. I think at this point I would prefer not to go into town meeting in an adversarial position against a united Board of Selectmen and say that we don't think a referendum is necessary, because I think their argument, while I don't particularly agree with it personally, is that we should let everybody vote on the matter. And I think that in order to make the counter argument to that, the bar will be very high to clear in order to say, we don't think everybody needs to vote on this. I think that we would be racing against the tide, basically, or trying to swim against the tide. And I think it's an unnecessary fight. I bet if we were to adjust the wording slightly and say the next possible election, perhaps we can investigate the possibility of having a single ballot during the presidential election and getting this on there. If that's not a possibility and we would end up with 2 ballots, that's maybe too messy, and maybe the legislature will rush this through really quickly and we can get it on the next election and not have any delay whatsoever. So the presidential election could be our fallback position, but my recommendation would be to go for the town-wide referendum so that we don't set ourselves up for a big fight on town meeting floor and with a united Board of Selectmen and put it to bed.
Thank you. Jonathan?
As we heard from previous town manager last night, our legislative delegation is going to push this through, so it'll be on in spring of 2016. If it is, which I am skeptical about, but nonetheless, if it is, it's going to be up there very likely with an override. And I think it's worth
The override would come after town meeting and
It
special
would,
election.
okay. There-
Right.
Okay, so we would be
It would
holding two
not
elections?
be, it would not be on the
All
same
right.
ballot.
I thought it would be, all right, then.
Now, if we put in next possible election, and we don't, and this measure didn't make it to the annual April election,
Then it could-
and we were having an override ballot, would that qualify as
No,
the
that's
next
possible.
election?
It wouldn't be possible because this information wouldn't have been back for it to be put on a ballot.
He's saying if there was an override,
We have an override ballot,
special election.
then, and our language in here is for the next possible election, then then it would go on with the override in June.
Could. Yeah.
It could,
Yeah, it could actually.
if we say next possible.
Possible.
Well, I think,
I presume there will be an override.
right.
I mean,
I think
thing-
we're all
things,
operating
I mean,
under
you
that
know,
assumption.
I mean, strike me.
Well,
Strike me
my-
dead, you know, hit me with lightning, you know. But I think there's, you know, it may not be as big an override as, you know, some people think, or as small, or it'll be bigger than a lot of people might wish for. But, you know, that's out of, I think we're going to have something. So I think there will be a June, okay? And if there isn't a June, then there is the November. And I think the expense, I'm not sure about this, and I wish I had asked the town clerk. I think the expense of an election is the election itself, not the printing of the ballots. Do you know anything about that, Anne Marie? Is that correct?
Think there's a-
Cost of printing the ballot, but you're absolutely correct, it's the cost of having all of the clerks and the wardens
Right.
using
Right.
these overtime.
Yeah. So if we roll it on to the November one, I think the additional cost would be minimal. I still am a big believer in the collective wisdom of town meeting, and the fact that generally they could do the job. And I think in this case, they probably could do the job, and probably will reflect, if it does go to referendum, probably will reflect exactly what that outcome would be. So I don't know. I don't know why people are so excited about having it go to a ballot, but I grant you, I may be in the minority. That's fine. Darnell?
Jonathan was,
Oh,
still had a
Jonathan,
thought to finish.
sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, if there's any chance of these things coming up on the same ballot, that concerns me. If there is to be an override, and if it works out as it may, I would not like to see the two on the same. I'd also echo the point that you've just made. I think this is a decision that the town meeting is fully competent to make on behalf of the electorate. That's why they've been voted in. On the other hand, I have no philosophical opposition to putting this out to the voters. I don't think it's, to sort of echo what Lee Michael said, this isn't a hill to die on or anything.
No.
I don't quite understand, I really don't, even having listened to the selectmen last night, I'm still not quite sure. This is quite the change in town government that they suggest that it is. If we were shrinking the number of people, yeah, that I would understand, but we're not. So,
Darnell?
Again, we are changing the fundamental structure of the way government is run in this town. So you can say I don't think it's a big deal going from 3 to 5, but it is. It is a big difference. Well, why are we doing it? All right? And
Right.
if you're asking to change the fundamental structure of the government in your town, it should be decided on by a town-wide vote. Now, you can say, oh, well, it can, town meeting kind of reflect what might show up at the ballots? Sure. But then you still denied the person who might be on the other side, or the dissenters, from voicing their opinion on a change of the government of their town. And a lot of people say, oh, that doesn't sound like that's important. But it is. That's why people get out there and vote. Even when you know 90% chance the person you're gonna vote for might not win, you still get up and go to that ballot box and vote because you voted your decision or your opinion at that time. So that's what you're talking about, taking away from a member of the town. You know, so to say like, oh, I think it's not for, it is. But we wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't important, I don't think. All right? And that's what, so I'm trying to get across to you that, you know, to you and everybody else, why it is important that the town votes this. That's why we have the selectmen who is their board, who sees the value of having a town vote on this, all right? And it is different from a strong town administrator, because a strong town administrator, the selectmen could have made that by just giving those powers down to them, because we got a checkpoint right there sitting on the decision board anyway, of a selectman in the search committee for all those different departments. This is voted positions. We're adding 2 more voted positions to the town. We need to vote it. I'm sorry. That's how I feel. And even people who might agree, I guarantee you, talk to people out there who might agree with you on going to a 5-meeting town, 5 members, board of selectmen, which I don't have a problem with. I still want to have a vote if I'm not a town meeting member, and vote my approval or my dissent on that. And it's just fundamental.
Yeah,
Jane.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it is government for the people, by the people. And by not putting this out there, you have already given them, you've already taken the choice away. If they decide to vote, that's fine. If they decide not to vote, that's fine. But this is a choice, and it's up to them to make it. And I think the more that we put it out there, I think the more time we give it. A lot of people are extremely busy. A lot of people don't know about government, and maybe we should do more that they do know about it. As I said earlier, it's their town. They pay the taxes. The kids go to school here. And it might be that they don't get around to voting, but it might be that they do know about it. They do know about their town, and they do know what's going on. And I think that's very, very important. And it is a way to involve people whether they come or not. It is a way, it is a conversation we can all have. It should be in the newspaper. It should be out and about. We should be talking about it. And I think that it's very, very important. And it's small towns like this, I think it gives a cohesiveness. It gives we're all in together, especially when we're going to go for an override, especially. I mean, everything should be out there. It should all be out there. And it's not up to us to choose whether people are going to vote or not. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I really think they should be given the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Phil?
The Town Government Study Committee has already made it clear its rationale for not supporting a townwide vote. I'm not going to repeat that. We've done enough repeating of things here. But I'm going to point out that we made a change at the last annual town meeting, and not any of the reasons that I'm hearing from people who support a townwide vote were made when we went to a strong town administrator. They weren't made around this table. They weren't made at the town meeting. So that begs the question, what is the difference? And I would submit that the difference is that people have a misunderstanding of what we're doing here. Contrary to what has been said, this is not a fundamental change in the structure of government. It would be a fundamental change in the structure if we were moving from selectmen to something else, or if we were adding other kinds of levels of power that we don't have in our structure right now. The change we made at the annual town meeting was a much more important change in terms of how it affects the voters of this town. than what we are proposing to do now. When we increased the power of the of the town administrator, we essentially transferred some of the power that voters beforehand had directly applied through a direct election of a selectman. And those powers were placed in the hands of an appointed town official. Now, we heard last night about, well, they can veto certain things. That's not gonna happen very often. And furthermore, many of the powers that were transferred to the town administrator have nothing to do with the veto power that the selectmen retained in certain select situations. So, so that was a big change, and yet no one was concerned about going to the voters about it. The motion was made on town meeting floor. We discussed it, which I think is the proper way to do it. Peter Mullen last night said he thought it was a 2-to-1 vote. In fact, it was almost a 3-to-1 vote. It was 158 to 57 after a discussion of the issue of whether the voters should need to vote on it. I think they spoke pretty loud and clear on that from their opinion. So I just don't understand this notion that it's a fundamental change. What we're doing is we're not affecting the power of the Board of Selectmen at all, but we did before. We changed the power of the selectmen and put some of it in a non-elected official. We are increasing of the ability of the citizens in the town to have a direct impact on the people who represent them by putting even more people into the seats so they can reach out even further into the community. We can expect to see a greater diversity of representation, I think, in the coming years with a 5-member board, beyond what we have today and what we've had historically. And I think that diversity can manifest itself in many ways. So we're not decreasing the direct voter role in what the selectmen do, although we did do that last April. So I think if the argument had been made that I'm hearing tonight last April, it might have had a little bit more merit, but I don't think it would have made any difference in the long run. I think we ought to show a little bit of deference to the Town Government Study Committee. After all, this is their article. They've researched it for a tremendous amount of time. They've discussed all the issues. They've discussed the issue of voting on a number of occasions. And I think that where possible, it's important for the Warrant Committee to show some deference for the views of committees that come before us, having studied an issue and made a recommendation on it. We're not closing the door on town meeting deciding to send this to a townwide vote. We already know that the Board of Selectmen are going to propose that on town meeting floor. That's fine. That's fine, which is why I don't agree with Lee Michael. There's nothing adversarial about this. We have 2 options in front of us that we can go to town meeting with. We can go with one that doesn't have a vote included. We can go with one that doesn't. If we go with the one that the Town Government Study has recommended, there's going to be a motion on town meeting floor. We're going to have a discussion on it. The Warrant Committee is going to have a weigh-in again and a vote, as well as individual votes as town meeting members on how that's going to go, and then we're going to vote on it. And so a vote tonight is not going to preclude any of that from happening. It's going to happen. And I don't think the discussion is going to be contentious, and I don't think that we're going to be viewed as being contentious with the Board of Selectmen. I think it would be a little bit more difficult for us to pass the version that has the townwide vote in it and have to try to take it out if some members at town meeting want to remove it. So I think that's a little bit more complicated in the way that would work. But can you wait until I'm done?
No,
Okay, thank you.
you know,
I think it would be a mistake to ignore the view of the Town Government Study Committee, because we're not sacrificing anything in terms of what the eventual outcome is going to be. The eventual outcome is going to be decided by town meeting, not by us. Thanks.
Thank you, Phil. Darnell.
A couple of things I don't agree with what Phil just said. And one of the things is that you say that we are giving deference to the Government Studies Committee, which we have, in a recommendation or feeling differently about how they perceive something going forward, whether it be with the town meeting vote or not, or a vote of the people in the town, that doesn't mean that we didn't honor and respect and wasn't grateful for the work that that committee has done.
I didn't say it didn't.
No, well, you said we should be more in deference to what the
Show some
work.
deference, yes.
And we have, because we had them in here, no, we have had them in here a number of times. We've listened to your recommendations. Nobody has come up and said that, well, we should not go forward with a 5-member board. We've definitely took the article seriously. We looked at it, we researched the article. We've discussed the pros and cons of a 3-member to a 5-member board. I don't think there's a big act against going with a 5-member board of selectmen over here. We have offered a lot of deference to that. We've done that. Now we've come to a point where we have a difference with what you're suggesting, how this thing gets voted into place. And
Some of
to
it.
say, no, I'm saying,
Some instances, we'll see.
yeah, I'm saying we have some difference with how this gets voted into place. And to say, by not rubber stamping everything you brought to us, or they brought to us, is somewhat, not respecting the work they did. I mean, like, come on, we're gonna be going through a ton of budgets here that we're gonna ask people to send them back and everything, and they're gonna work just as hard as trying to get those things together and putting those things together. But we will have differences with them, we'll send it back, and it's not because we're trying to disrespect them in any way. And that's not what's going on here. Again, you said like, oh, it's gonna make it harder because the eventuality of this vote is gonna be done on a town meeting floor, and it's gonna be that we're not gonna wanna send it to the voters. I'm like, a little presumptuous there, but I would say that let's figure it out. Let the town meeting figure it out, and I would like to have it. Go with the Board of Selectmen on this. Don't always agree with them, but this is one thing that I do. I think the town should have the right to vote, and this is a significant change in the way we're governing this town, because now we're taking the power of 3 and moving it to the power of 5. Because it's not like we're putting 2 junior selectmen on the board. We're putting 2 full selectmen on the board, and I think we should have discussion about what this 5-member board, because nothing is going to actually be doing. In that we did change some of the things. That discussion hasn't even happened across town of what they're actually going to be doing. What's going to be their new job description. That education and that conversation should be had across this town. It has not happened. And to say like, oh, well, our government study committee put this together and has done this, and I think they did a great job. I just need to see, I want to have a job description. I want to hear what people say as they, go pros and cons of doing this, of what they expect to see out of this new board. I think that education is needed. And, it hasn't gone on throughout this town. The benefits of having a 5-member board hasn't really gone out to the average person, the general person throughout this town. I know, we sit on committees. We deal with this all the time. So, yes, we're going to be informed of what we expect them to do. But general public, a lot of times they're looking at this here last night, tonight, maybe saw one earlier, one of our earlier meetings when we had some of these discussions. That's probably the majority of what they've got as far as this is concerned. So, I mean, there are other reasons of having the general election other than just say, oh, let the people decide. It creates discussion points throughout the town and everything else.
All the same arguments could be made in April. It
Well,
shouldn't, because
well,
that, because that vote was a vote that did change the role of selectmen. This
Well,
vote doesn't change the role of selectmen.
but again,
That one did.
right now, the selectmen are the backstop to our town administrator. The town administrator.
There will be in the
No,
future too.
no, so let's say, it is. So when you say it's a non-appointed position, that's great, that's true, but we still have our selectmen there, even though we're turning over some of the day-to-day operations down to the,
Almost all of them.
to the town, to the town administrator and stuff. That's fine. We still got a backstop of our selectmen, and if our town administrators start acting up or doing something that the town finds disturbing, they know that their rumps are on the line, so it behooves them to correct those activities.
Right.
Right? And so that's
But it
why this
changed
is
their role, did it
fundamentally
not?
different.
It
No,
changed
well,
their role,
no,
didn't
it
it?
changed their role,
Yeah.
but they still have the ultimate power, and they still are ultimately responsible for what that town administrator does.
But their power changed, and this
it's
argument was
just the
not
work-
made,
no.
and this argument was not
The
made in April.
workload has changed.
Can you tell me why you didn't make this argument in
Their
April?
workload has changed, because
No,
what,
no,
no,
their
no,
responsibilities changed. Their role in town government changed. The
It's still
role is
responsible.
now moved over to the town administrator.
but it's still
And
backstopped.
Many decisions are made every day. The idea that the selectmen are gonna start backstopping every decision that the town
Well, a lot of
administrator
stuff
makes
they,
is not
but
true.
the problem is, a lot of the stuff that they were handling, they didn't need to handle, and that's part of what came out in the government studies committee. That's
There was
make,
no townwide discussion about it, though.
well,
was
a
there?
lot of stuff,
Was
they,
there?
well, the thing is though, that's an unelected position. These are elected positions in the town, and being at the elected
what reason?
position.
If it's an
being at
unelected
the-
position.
No, is being at the elected positions in this town, we should have, a vote on this. And that's all I'm saying. That's what it's about.
Let's see what Mr. McCurdy has to say.
I don't think that the conversation about what happened in April has any relevance here. People that weren't maybe paying as close attention as they ought to have. So the argument came up late. If it came up earlier in the process, I certainly think that it would have gone in front of the voters, because people would have had the chance, to talk about what was going on a little more than what happened. It was, I agree with you, it was a bigger change than what this is. But nevertheless, in Massachusetts, our governance of structure of our government is our Constitution, and that's changed by back-to-back legislatures supporting it, and then a referendum. And here, this is Milton's guiding, principles of organization, and having them changed by having the review by the legislative body, town meeting, and then the voters through referendum. I think it's right down the line, how things ought to go when there's a change in the structure of governments. And we can debate semantics all day. Going from 3 to 5 is a change. It's not as significant as the powers that were switched from, the selectmen down to the town administrator, and that might be something that if you had a do-over, you might want to throw that one out to the town for a referendum vote as well. So I don't care how it plays out. Whether it's taken up at town meeting and voted down as a referendum, or taken up at town meeting and voted for a referendum. I'm in favor of a referendum on this from the town voters.
Okay, thanks. So I think we do owe a large debt to the Town Government Study Committee for all the articles they brought us, even though 6 of them last spring was a bit much. But at any rate, this one here was also well-researched and well-presented, and I don't think anybody in this room well, I won't say that. I think there's a lot of support for this article of, expanding the Board of Selectmen to 5. And I think in the long term, it'll be great for the town. It's a change. People are leery of changes, and because it changes faces, the makeup of a board that people have been used to voting for, and their faces and personalities involved. If there's a change there, then, and they're not participating in it, then they may feel a bit disenfranchised. And, you know, that's the argument for throwing out the referendum, and the argument for not bothering with the referendum is that, gee, we do have a representative town government, and, you know, they're pretty good, you know, so, and pretty reliable. So it doesn't matter to me. I like the town meeting members to shoulder the responsibility, but it can go out to a referendum, and it won't. And it probably will go to a referendum if it comes up at town meeting. So one of the issues about a referendum is the timing, and I know that you've said, so what, it's worth it. And, you know, I mean, there is, I mean, we have lost opportunities if it goes another year. I mean, there is a cost to that. There, you know, literally, there will be dollars. It's hard to measure them in advance, but that will be a problem. But if timing's not an issue, then maybe the referendum isn't an issue. I do personally wonder if some of the people who are gung-ho about a referendum are also, oh, I forget what the term is, but anyway, if they're diehard hopefuls that they can beat the vote and keep the selectmen at 3. You know, I don't know. You know, Darnell?
I tell you right now, no. I might, because I'm for actually moving to a 5-member board of selectmen.
Right.
But the thing about it is,
I'm not talking about you.
No,
I'm
no,
talking about other people.
No. But when you say that, you got to look what the arguments are in this room,
Right.
and present it to the people. And I make that clear. Is personally, you know, I would vote for it, but at the same time, I understand that there is a change in the way government is going to be run and handled here in Milton, in the town of Milton, and therefore I believe the people of Milton should have a chance to voice their opinion on what they see this change to mean to them. And it's going to mean something different to each one of them who goes out there and, you know, punch that ticket. So, you know, we can sit here and say, oh, it's not going to be important. It can be very dang important to somebody for a reason that we have nothing to do with, but they want to make that vote. And I think we owe it to people of the town to allow them to make that vote. And that's why I would recommend that we do vote to recommend the recommendation with the referendum in it.
Is that a motion?
That's my motion.
I'll second it.
Okay. All right, so, any other questions,
Yes.
comments?
Would you accept a friendly amendment to change the language to next possible election?
Yes.
We have an agreement with the selectmen on that, you know. I mean, you start changing the language of that recommendation.
Oh, that's right.
That was a,
Yeah.
well, long crafted agreement. And I don't think there's any reason to change the language.
The
If you're
only,
gonna have a vote.
the only reason we discussed yesterday was the potential to not be able to use was it the presidential election? Because that is neither an annual or
Yeah,
special
but the
town.
bigger concern of the Board of Selectmen is they don't want this to happen too early. So that if Kevin Mern's, you know, belief that they can get this done in a few months is accurate, and then we go to a vote, we still don't want this to occur before the spring of 2017, because we want the strong town administrator to have time to its role to work
Understand that,
in the
yeah.
town. So that's why we put in the 2017.
But that'd
That's
be
all still there, right?
It's all still there.
The first sentence says, in no event before.
We're talking about the,
The referendum.
when the referendum could be submitted.
Changing it from
So instead of, in section 3, this act shall be submitted for acceptance to the voters of the town of Milton at the next annual or special town election following its passage, okay? If annual or special town was eliminated and possible, the word possible was substituted, then it would say that it would go out to the voters of the town of Milton at the next possible election, which could be the annual town election in April,
Or an over.
Be a special-
could be a special ballot in, say, June, or it could be the November election, which would be just, the presidential, which would, and all three of those would allow for the possibility of selectmen being added in 2017 and not delaying this. So there would be 3 bites at the apple, as it were.
Yeah, I'm just not concerned
So-
about I'm concerned about any legal issues with that language. Usually in these things, you see that they mention the kinds of elections they want them held, as opposed to, I don't know what the next possible election necessarily means. You can always have a special election. You can call a
What's the
special
definition
election
of a
anytime.
special election?
It's any elected
So,
code of term.
So the override would be a special election.
I think next
Leave it alone.
catches it either way.
Next,
Next,
covers it.
I think so.
Yeah. It's just that, you would have to call a special election on the day of the presidential election if you wanted to use that day.
So
can't-
eliminate possible, just say next election is Steve's recommendation.
I think you're probably right, but. look at
Next
this.
election.
I don't see difference.
Oh, I see.
Just eliminate, forget possible, just the next election.
Still tight.
So you made the motion, Lee Michael made a friendly amendment to change that. Phil had a question about it.
What's the amendment right now? Is it to change it to possible election or next election?
There was discussion with them on.
What's the friendly, what's your friendly amendment now? Next election,
Well,
eliminate
maybe we could hear the town administrator, whether
annual
she's
or
concerned
special.
whether the selectmen would, or whether she sees any practical issues in changing that language.
Well, I can't answer for the Board of Selectmen, but, there was lengthy discussion, as Phil said, at the meeting with the Town Government Study Committee, that they were concerned that this not take place before 2007.
No,
Yeah, that's gonna,
it's 2 different things.
Yeah.
It's the election of new selectmen based on this recommendation would not, in any event, happen until 2017,
Right.
okay? Regardless of when the voters might vote on a referendum, okay? Were the Board of Selectmen concerned about the timing of a referendum?
No, I think it was more about
when the first,
when it
The
would be
vote for the
in
new
place.
selectmen,
That's
yeah.
right, when would be in
Yeah, Peter Mullen drafted this, and he specifically used the language of annual and special town meetings. And when the town council looked at it and redrafted it, he kept that language. I'm just concerned there's a reason that the language was used as specifically as that. And I appreciate that people are trying to speed the process up so it doesn't, so that the vote doesn't look like it's an obstacle to
Right.
delay, in delaying it. But I'd be more concerned if we made the change, we might be causing a problem on town floor, I don't know.
I'll withdraw the friendly amendment.
that's fine.
That's my only concern.
Okay, so far.
So a presidential election is not a special town.
No,
They would have to call election that.
that's,
No, but I think people are right. I think you can call a special election
the day of.
inside that.
Yeah, that way they
I
cover
mean,
your costs.
we've done that before.
Yeah, 75% of your costs are covered anyway, or something like that, for presidential. You think we'll have-
Override ballot would also be a special town election,
That's a special election.
or is
Yeah,
that?
I don't know whether you also have to call another special election with it, or whether you have it on the same ballot, I don't know. Don't know.
Well, it's at the next. Steve?
We likely have
Primary too.
override in 16, and we definitely have a townwide election in 16. And if this does go through as quickly as anticipated, it'll be in place for one or the other of those, for a townwide referendum. And then, based on the acceptance of the act by the voters of the town, whenever that is, but no sooner than 2017. So
It passes
there's
muster all the way
there's
around.
there's a year and a half here to work with of potentially scheduling a special election if one is actually needed. You know, we're not electing a president this fall, so we have to hurry up and do anything. We've got some chance here to let this just play through.
Right, right. I just
Yeah.
would hate to see.
But I guess the language special or annual covers all elections.
All election. So we're fine, we're done.
Okay.
There aren't any other
right.
elections
I
that
have
we
another
have.
question.
So you withdraw the
I
friendly?
did withdraw the
Okay,
friendly
thank
amendment,
you.
and I have a different question.
Sure.
If we were to vote no on Darnell's motion, we can then make another motion on this same article to put it through without a townwide referendum, right?
Of course. Of course. In fact, we need to do something.
Right.
We are charged to make a recommendation on every article, so we have to do something. Correct.
Okay.
Well, yeah, that's true in 99.5% of the cases. There have been a couple of wacky situations that have been kicked down the road, but this is not one of them. So, any other comments on this motion? Okay, all in favor of the motion to recommend this article with a referendum?
It's 4.
It's 4.
Oh, great.
And there's 10 people here? Okay. I can
No,
see
9.
where the wind's blowing.
Ted's gonna have to break the tie.
Accuse himself.
Okay, all opposed? Okay,
Oh, that's 5.
5
I
to 4.
miscounted, I guess. I forgot you
Thank
came
you.
late. I counted before you came.
Can
Okay.
you vote on this though? Because of, do you have to accuse yourself from the vote on this? That's the only question. Because your board put this up, because you have another board that put this article up. Can you vote on it?
Times 10, did I vote on it?
No, I said, can you vote on it? That's my question. You have to accuse yourself.
I think you can vote on it. We lost, Darnell.
No.
No, that's the question.
Live to fight another day on.
Okay, so, Lee Michael.
I move that we recommend for an expansion of the Board of Selectmen from 3 to 5 and do not include the language for the townwide referendum.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Thank you. All opposed? 2. Okay, that concludes our business for tonight. And
We'll do the rest of the evening.
thank you. Lee
Motion
Michael,
to adjourn.
We'll hear about it at town.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you very much.